Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis Pamela Isfeld, la présidente de la PASE. Je vous souhaite la bienvenue. On est ici pour un webinaire sur la planification de la retraite avec TradeX. I'm here with you with Blair Cooper and Luc Bizayon from, sorry, did I say your name? I realize I probably just said your name wrong. From TradeX, who I believe a lot of you have seen before. They've done a couple of webinars with us on retirement planning and different financial issues. TradeX is special to PAFSO since it was founded by two trade commissioners, right? Back several five trade commissioners. Okay, back back what in the 80s, I believe, or the
I
I
see.
can't remember the exact time, but I remember Al Kilpatrick was one of them who was Deputy Minister of Trade by the time I joined the department. And so PAFSO has an ongoing, continuing relationship with TradeX, and we're really happy that Blair and his team are willing to come to talk to us today about this retirement planning in light of this early retirement initiative and things that are coming down the pike for us in terms of the government's comprehensive economic review. So I will not do a big introduction. I will let them introduce their team because we don't have a huge amount of time. But I do want to note that we are here. I'm joining this webinar, hosting this webinar from the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, and we acknowledge and respect them as the past, present, and future guardians and caretakers of these lands. And I know people are joining from all different places, and I ask you to take a moment to think about the traditional peoples of the lands that you're on and what this means for the lives that we all live today. I also note that we're recording the webinar, so we will post it on our YouTube channel for people who can't be here. Um, if if you have any questions, we ask you to put them in the Q&A box, and Luke and Blair and team will answer live in the chat as much as they can. And then at the end, we may have a moment for live questions if there's time. I also remind you that this is not a forum to get individual questions answered about, your specific case. There's contact information in the presentation. You can reach out to TradeX for individual advice if you want to seek that. Um, Vous pouvez poser des questions et faire des commentaires dans la langue de votre choix. Je pense que la présentation, la plupart est en anglais, mais on peut comprendre en français aussi. And with that, I will turn it over to you guys. And I'm going to be listening and watching the Q&A, but I am going to turn my camera off just so that my weird head is not a weird distraction during this whole thing. So over to you guys.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Pam, for that lovely intro, and thank you to all members here that decided to tune in. So we're happy to kind of get started here. I'm just going to take a moment and share my screen, and maybe I can get a thumbs up if things are looking okay here. All right, awesome. Thank you. So yes, merci beaucoup à tout le monde pour assister à la session de ce matin. Quite happy to be able to come here and provide you with a little bit more context when it comes to these early retirement incentives that are slated to come through early part of next year. So early retirement readiness, we're preparing for early retirement incentives and workforce adjustment. Obviously, these are, not new topics to everybody in this room here. And as I said, we're going to try and deliver a little bit more context around what they are, how they will affect retirement plans, and certainly give you a few ideas as far as key considerations to make sure that you're ready to take advantage of these of these options that are that or or maybe completely disregard them depending on the case. So maybe just to kind of recap what Pam discussed. So just a little bit about TradeX if you're not familiar with us. So yes, we were formed back in 1960 by five trade commissioners posted abroad who wanted a low-cost way of investing. So they created back then, and what is still in place today, our main core TradeX equity fund, which is about a 60% Canadian stock fund with 20% in the US, 20% globally. So that's sort of our roots. Our roots are with the Foreign Service, but our mission has always been to provide current and former public servants and their families trustworthy, high quality advice and mutual funds at low cost. So we are all salaried individuals. We're not commission based. We have a not-for-profit model. So at the end of the year, all excess revenue goes back to our members by essentially reducing the fees on their investments, and specifically the TradeX mutual funds. Here is our advisor team, including myself. We have Blair Cooper, Brian Marshall, Jorn Lewis, Leonard, and Connor all on the lines here to answer your Q&A. So feel free if there's anything that isn't clear or if you have specific kind of questions on the material, feel free. We'll do our best to answer through the Q&A. In addition to providing these types of presentations and pre-retirement courses, we do offer free portfolio reviews, mutual funds, and access to over 40 mutual fund companies funds. So we can really create these really tailored, individualized portfolios using a myriad of options from Canadian funds to fixed income, floating rate securities to socially responsible investments. We can really tailor to everyone's needs. So maybe to get started with kind of this early retirement readiness, I thought it might be helpful to kind of talk about the current pension rules as they stand, let's say in 2025. We'll then kind of get through what the proposed or what the changes will be. A few, we'll get into detail on a few considerations you'll want to take depending on the scenario that affects you the most. And then we'll get through a number of case studies as well that will help kind of clear things up, some misconceptions about the changes happening. And you may find yourself in either of those scenarios. But as Pam mentioned, we did try to make it we did try to provide the most information that would affect the most people, I suppose, but your individual tailored situations, by all means, you can certainly contact us at any time for specifics or specific projections. We'd be certainly happy to assist. Obviously, everyone's situation is quite different, but let's get through the current pension rules as they start now, just kind of to get us started at a base here. So if you are a participant in the plan, in your plan prior to 2012, here are the rules as they state now. So if you're age 60 or over and have at least 2 years of service, you'll receive an immediate unreduced pension. Similar, age 55 and over with at least 30 years, again, an immediate unreduced pension. And then if you're in between the ages of 50 to 60, you can receive a deferred pension at age 60 or an immediate pension, but that pension would be reduced. So the next slide shows what that reduction would be. And again, these are rules as they are right now. So if you've completed the following years of service, 25 years or more, and you're age 50, but under the age of 55, your allowance or your pension will be reduced by either the greater of 5% for each year under the age of 55, or 5% for each year that your pensionable service is less than the 30-year requirement. And then maybe I'll just go right to the end here. So if you have less than 25 years of service, let's say, but you're age 50, then your allowance would be reduced by 5% for each year you're under the age of 60. So again, these are the reduction rules as they stand. If you're a participant in the plan, or essentially your hire date is after January 2013, then there are separate rules as they stand right now. I'll go through maybe just a couple of them here. So age 60 and over, at least 30 years, you get a service, you have an immediate unreduced pension. If you're in between the age of 55 and 65 with at least 2 years of pension, you can defer, of 2 years of service, you can defer your pension at 65 or receive an immediate pension, but it would be reduced. And then those similar reductions are right here. So again, this is the presentation's being recorded. We can provide you these slides as well. But again, we're just setting the stage as far as what your pension rules are currently. So there are changes coming, as we're all aware. So I thought it might be helpful to talk about workforce adjustment in a couple of ways here. So, and specifically what we'll address in this presentation is more so the transition support measure that would be included should you be declared a surplus employee. So that would be a lump sum that would be paid to you based on your years of service. There are obviously other elections that can be made and kind of other flows that you may be able to kind of entertain. One of them being alternation. Should you find yourself in this kind of workforce adjustment sphere here. And alternation is essentially the process is letting an opting employee swap jobs with a non-affected employee who's willing to leave the public service. So it would essentially save the first person's job while providing early exit benefits to the other individual. How this process works, I'm sure there's there's not only management approval, but I'm sure there's that, there's a director approval and some process that would need to occur here. But for the part of this, the idea here with this presentation is really to kind of touch on the transition support measure that you may receive if you are determined to be a surplus. Your position is determined to be a surplus. And then I did want to mention that transition support measure is in addition to severance, and you will receive a pension reduction waiver, which is essentially the same as the early retirement incentive. So we'll get through all of that, but we're just kind of bringing up these points right at the start. So I'll get through it in a little bit more detail here if anything isn't super clear at this stage. And to give you an idea, that transition support measure, if you have over 20 years of service, it will be 52 weeks of pay, so a year's salary. And then there are implications as far as how you want to deal with that TSM payment should you find yourself in that situation. We'll get through some of those ideas a little bit later. So the early retirement incentive, ERI, is the purpose, obviously, is it supports workforce renewal and helps maintain essential government services through early retirement options. There are some benefits to it for specific employees who are wanting to retire, and the main benefit here is you'd be able to retire without the standard pension penalties, meaning you would be able to retire without any of those 5% per year reductions, whether it be based on age or be based on or years of service. So there would be no reduction in your payment for early retirement, or no reduction in your pension for early retirement. And obviously, there is a 1 year window, so that's a time-sensitive application, requiring decisions to be made quite quickly. I'm not envious of that situation for many people affected here. 30, 60 days is hardly anything to make, you know, to make these long-term plans. So it's definitely a tough situation for many. Um, so that said, eligibility criteria for ERI is essentially the minimum age for Group 1, and we'll tend to focus more on Group 1 prior, starting work prior to 2012, excuse me. So the eligibility would be minimum age of 50 years old for Group 1, 10 years of service, and again, you have 1 year window to make that application for ERI. Group 2, it would be the age of 55 with 10 years of service and 1 year, same ERI window to make that election. So the significance of ERI is it allows eligible employees to retire early without that 5% reduction. It can increase the pension benefits depending on how many years of service you are, what age you are. It can actually increase your benefits by up to 50% more compared to traditional early retirement plans. We've put in here improved work-life balance, so it may offer greater flexibility for some employees to pursue other interests, whether it be part-time work or you know or maybe some type of contract work, although that may be more in the future as opposed to the short term. Um, but nevertheless, it would improve obviously for some, maybe that work-life balance aspect of things should retirement have already been in the plans. I mostly on this slide here, obviously there's two groups of eligibility, as I mentioned, but I did want to note that the amounts that you're going to receive through ERI are still impacted by the reduced years of service. So it's not that with the ERI election, all that's occurring is there will be no 5% per year reduction. Your accumulated years of service from the date you retire is still going to be the base years of service your pension and bridge benefit will be calculated off of. It's from there, from that point on, there will be no additional reduction on that amount. So I just wanted that to be clear that it's not that you can retire at 25 years, but your pension is based on 30 years of service. That's not correct. It's just the reduction that is removed. So I hope that kind of clears things up. A little bit of a misconception we've heard through our offices. So why employees are considering ERI? Well, it does offer guaranteed pension income sooner, providing financial security for individuals who are already planning for early retirement or are closer to retirement than others. It can provide some flexible work transitions, so part-time or consulting work, as I suggested, it may be a little further on than kind of the 1 year window, but it can offer some stress relief and some stability as well in some cases to reduce job stress and uncertainty during workforce restructuring. Not to suggest all departments, through the government of Canada, all departments certainly have their own challenges, and we have heard from a lot of individuals very tough scenarios, and so for those individuals it might be a really good way to improve mental well-being. And then there are some tax benefits as well, having earlier access to pension splitting, for instance, if you have a spouse. Sometimes the tax efficiencies close that gap as far as what your expected future income or full pension income may have otherwise been. Having to, that added benefit of being able to split the pension, could definitely close that gap, if you will. Um, and actually, we'll get through some scenarios regarding pension income splitting here in the key financial considerations section. So some things you want to consider if you are deciding to make that election for early retirement. Um, it will impact your Canada pension plan or your Quebec pension plan. So early retirement will affect the benefit, and it will reduce your overall pension income from those sources, because you'll be working less, so you'll be contributing less to CPP or QPP if you're receiving pension from there. It will affect your savings and withdrawals. So your plans like your RRSP and TFSA that may have to be kind of prematurely decumulated. Hence, if you're trying to kind of supplement some income by withdrawing from your plans early, a key consideration to keep in mind is, do you have that pool of money to supplement that loss in income? Maintaining some income, obviously, through part-time work may be an option as well. So there's some income splitting strategies that we can enable and model as well. Mostly, again, as I mentioned, the pension splitting option, but depending on your age, there are options to split your registered plans, like your registered retirement income fund plans, for instance. Perhaps using a lower income spouse, a younger spouse's age to base those payments off of. And then obviously there's health and workforce factors as well, that could come and influence retirement timing and the financial decisions too. So continuing on, these kind of concepts here that we're just kind of throwing throwing at you, but as I said, we'll get through some of them. You got to keep in mind the salary expectation and growth of that salary versus inflation indexing. So retiring early forfeits future salary increases and years of service, but your pension does index annually. Let's say you're retiring early 5 years earlier than expected, and your average earnings is a gross $100,000. Well, there is $500,000 in lump sum that you are foregoing by taking the pension early. So that's not it's a considerable amount when you look at it that way as well. So keeping that in mind, your salary versus your pension and what your salary increase expectations are versus the linking of the inflation protection that you have on your superannuation. It's important to talk about the tax impacts and the net after-tax reality of what those cash flows will look like. So your gross pension may look like a significant decrease as well, but after tax, the picture might be a little bit different. We'll show you in modeling some retirement projections, how that can look like. And then I did touch on pension income splitting here. So it does allow couples to split pension income a little bit sooner. We'll get through that type of scenario here on the next slide, I believe, or in a slide or two. And again, if alternation is a possibility, and there's a likelihood of workforce adjustment as well for your position, it may obviously be better to hold off until you receive that workforce adjustment, because you'll receive the same ERI benefits embedded, and in addition to, you'll receive that lump sum. So that lump sum payment or that transition support payment, right? In addition to likely a severance as well, depending on your collective bargaining agreements. So all that to say, and we don't know at this stage what that looks like. So we don't know if it's department by department, if it ends up being that a department, let's say, has received numerous ERI elections to where they now do not have to adjust workforce in that department, and you were sort of waiting for that workforce adjustment. Well, then, you may be, losing out, or you may not be considered for ERI, for instance, right? That to me is is a possibility. So as I say, it's a really tough situation if you find yourself um, in that particular situation, right? It's balancing out the likelihood of adjustment versus versus not being considered for ERI if there's too many people that have already elected to do so. Um, that's just kind of one of the realities that your early retirees are facing here. So I wanted to touch on the impact to CPP. So because the CPP, you contribute to CPP, there's two ceilings for higher income earners. In the scenario here, we're going to model if you're retiring 5 years earlier than expected. So we have an individual who's age 55. They contribute to CPP until the age of 55. Their expectation in 5 years' time would be a maximum CPP of $1,824 right here at age 65. Get my laser pointer right here. Should they decide to take it early, there's a 36% reduction. It'd be $1,100. And should they delay, it'd be upwards of $2,700 per month. Early retirement would drop that because you have 5 less contributory years to CPP. So modeling on a maximum base level here of CPP, that would drop to $1,500 at the normal retirement age of 65. So it is considerable. That's a monthly amount, $300 less a month. So that would be the impact, one of the impacts on CPP. I thought I'd touch on kind of the break-even point as well when we're talking a little bit more about kind of health considerations and, elections of when to take CPP. So I just wanted to quickly model here the break-even point. So we have Paul who, as an example, takes CPP at 60, and we have Brenda who takes CPP at 65. So Paul's monthly CPP payment will be 36% less than Brenda's, but he'll collect for 5 years longer. So the break-even age is actually the age of 74, where Brenda will pull ahead with more money in pocket, if you will. So should Paul maybe expect a lower life expectancy due to health concerns, so on and so forth, or family history, it may be beneficial on that basis to take CPP early. And the opposite would be true. If there are no health concerns, then taking CPP at the normal age here may be more prudent as well. Obviously, we're just kind of touching the surface on this. There are a lot of considerations to consider if you need CPP for supplemental income due to, ERI election or workforce adjustments. By all means, that's something we can model, and that's it's a good way to kind of bridge that gap. So everyone's situation is quite different. I did want to show as well, if you are one implication, so let's say we're retiring early, we need supplemental income, we're not contributing for that additional 5 years, let's say. I wanted to model the loss or the opportunity cost, if you will, of doing so. So the present value, you can look at this as kind of the pool of money that your future cash flows from CPP will be based on. So we're modeling this to age 95, 2% inflation, 3% wage inflation. So your pot of money, let's say, at age 65 is right around $350,000. So all of your monthly benefits are based off of this lump sum, if you will. Whereas if you decided to take CPP early, that lump sum pool of money is quite significantly reduced here. So I find it a little bit more compelling of an argument here to kind of not take it at 60 if you can delay it. But in any event, just kind of showing you the pool of money as well, should you decide to delay to age 70 here. Your CPP would be based on almost $500,000 of accumulated contributions and benefits. So that's about $2,300 per month starting at age 70. Why income splitting could, with this early retirement incentive lens, why this could be beneficial is essentially the tax savings. And it could, depending on incomes, provide additional old age security starting at the age of 65. So just to show quickly, we have a $60,000 eligible pension from an individual in Ontario. And we have a zero income earning spouse. So we're able now to split that $60,000 if you retired early. $30,000 would be taxed in the name of the lower income earning spouse, and now 70,000 would be your income base as a higher income earning spouse or the pensioner, let's say. So otherwise, we would be taxed on our $100,000. Let's just say for this example, that's salary, or all your pension income plus contract work, old age security benefit. And because we're over that $94,000 first hurdle, we're receiving an OAS clawback. Tax would be right around $29,000 and net income at $79,000. So just by a little simple tick of the box on your tax software, you're able to split half of that eligible pension to a lower income earning spouse if you find yourself in that situation. And the idea is that you save roughly around $3,000 in tax and additional old age security that's no longer clawed back. So the income projections that we can provide, and we're going to try to link and provide to everybody on the call today, is really good in kind of detailing these specifics for individuals, whether it's income splitting or adding rental income, and modeling early retirement versus not. So the program that we use is quite good in depicting a lot of scenarios in that form. Something to consider as well in the event that we're, again, early retirement lens, we're having to redeem from our investments a little bit sooner than not. The location of your assets is going to be even more important. So here we're giving a breakdown of a high growth investment, 8% annual return. We have an initial investment of $50,000. Over 9 years, that compounding rate at 8% grows to 100,000. And after the next 10 years, you're at over 200,000. Whereas a low growth investment at 3%, let's say it's a savings account or a GIC, over that time frame, we've accumulated only $85,000. The idea here is that we're still going to want to have some higher growth investments, but the location of those assets is going to be paramount, because you're going to want to have your higher income or your higher return investments, let's say in a tax-free savings account, versus your RRSP, which would essentially just be taxed. And depending on situations, that may not be the worst case if your income is significantly lower than your pre-retirement income. It may be worth, redeeming some of that RRSP early. We'll get through some of those scenarios, but here we want to focus more so on what you've accumulated to date and where should we be allocating those assets, not just geographically or not just by equity and income, but making sure that they're in the right locations for the future. And then the issue of redeeming your investments earlier than you would have, and the risk of receiving lower negative returns early in a period when withdrawals are made from an investment portfolio. So there's going to be, for early retirees, a bit more of a sequence of returns risk going forward in your accounts, because the order of the sequences of the returns um, is a primary concern for those individuals who are living off of those assets. So if we're retiring early, we're going to be living more off of those assets than not. So um, to kind of give you a bit of an idea here, if we have $100,000 portfolio and we start, let's say, the last 15 years, and we've had 20% returns starting off, but our returns have kind of dwindled after that 15-year time frame, 7% negative, 11%, 12% negative towards the end of our growth phase here. We're actually left with the same amount of money if the returns were flipped. 4.5% average annual return when all of these 15 years are compounded together. So it doesn't really matter in this time frame of 15 years if you're going to leave the amount there. You're going to be left with that same pool of money at the end and the same average annual return. It's just that the returns have flipped. But in the instance where you're having to redeem um, sooner than expected, so here we're depicting a 7% annual withdrawal amount, the returns really do have a big effect on the end balance, because you don't have the pool of money dwindles quicker because you're redeeming at lower valuations or at lower prices, if you will, because you need supplemental income. So again, 7%, $7,000 withdrawals, you have 20% returns at the start. You're still left with a balance at the end of this 15 years, and you've received over $100,000 in total withdrawals. But if your returns are flipped and you start receiving negative returns here in the coming years where you're having to withdraw out of your plan to supplement income, we've lost about 5, 6 years here of $7,000 redemptions because we've depleted our plans quicker. So paramount for planning purposes would be to have the right investments in the right locations, and to really have diversified portfolios, to not have to redeem at inopportune times, or to have at least 3 or 4 years worth of payments, let's say, in lower risk investments, that so that we're not having to kind of deplete our pool of money quicker than we need to. I wanted to show the combined federal and Ontario tax brackets for 2026 coming up as well. So depending on where you believe your income range will be, whether you're deciding to retire next year or not, here are the rates. I just want to preface, in Canada, it's a proportional income tax rates are proportional. So it's not that you find yourself in this tax bracket for every dollar that you earn. If you're earning $117,000, let's say, it's only on the first $53,000 that you pay these amounts. Although if we're receiving kind of 60% of our salary, likely going to have quite lower tax bracket in retirement than pre-retirement. So again, just for your own purposes here, we have some tables so you can find your specific brackets. And then here is combined for federal and Quebec as well. So we'll get through some case studies to kind of just show us some scenarios when it comes to transition support measures, early retirement, so on and so forth. So we have Sandra here in 2025, has 25 years of pensionable service. Her average salary is $140,000. She has $100,000 in her RRSP and $50,000 in her TFSA. Her retirement is slated for 2031 at the age of 55, where she'll have 30 years of pensionable service, and her average salary at that time is just over $148,000. So this depiction is kind of current rules. This Sandra is not taking early retirement or workforce adjustment. This is just going to be a normal retirement scenario with no reduction in her pension. And as I said, we'd be happy to send these types of projections to everybody. They'll look similar to these depictions and variables. So we're using on a financial asset return of 6.9%. We're using the average CPP amount, which is about 57%, although public servants tend to find themselves on the higher end of that, closer to the maximum. We're using other conservative estimates like a date of death of age 95, because we want to make sure that our assets are kind of smoothed out all the way to age 95, and we're depleting all of the assets as well up to that date of death that we're modeling. We're using inflation of 2.1, and what that boils down to is Sandra's estimated retirement income cash flow from all of her sources. So that would be pension, her superannuation, Canada Pension Plan, Old Age Security, her RRSP, RIF, and TFSA. Her smoothed out gross annual income would be just under $75,000. So the cash flow projection would show a $90,000 base real amount, which means this is her take-home net income today. Her annual income and employment income and her net income, her take-home. In retirement at age 55 here, we're estimating her pension to be $90,000, and we are using some TFSA withdrawals and RRSP withdrawals to supplement her income. So income drops from, let's say today, $90,000 to $75,000. So she has essentially 84% coverage of her pre-retirement earnings. And for Sandra, that was as planned. The example we like to use is she has now paid off her mortgage, her largest expense, so that 20% gap is going to be funded by less expenses. So this is the model that we're showing here for Sandra if she decided I want to stay until and keep the plan and stay until the age of 30 with 30 years of service. Now Sandra's decided we want to take early retirement with a reduction. So this is in the event in the scenario where ERI would not be applicable. Her $75,000 cash flow would drop to $54,000, primarily due to the 5% per year away from age 55 that she would be assessed. So her pension would be lower. Because her pension is lower, we're having to redeem from the RRSP a little bit sooner to supplement income. So this is that decumulation issue, or that sequence of returns issue, where we're depleting assets a little bit quicker than we wanted, perhaps. And then obviously pension is starting with the reduction a lot earlier. And we're having, let's sake of argument here, we're probably covering, that would be roughly 70% of pre-retirement earnings here. Let's see quickly. Yeah, 60%, sorry. So not the ideal scenario, but let's say on the next slide, Sandra elected for early retirement instead, so that roughly $54,000 in income is quite considerable with the election of ERI because that pension is no longer reduced by that 5% per year of service or per year away from age 55. We're using group one here as well. In the case studies, I didn't mention that, but we are using the example here for if you were to be part of group one, so prior service to 2020 or started work prior to 2013 in the public service. So that's quite a significant increase, right, in annual income. So we're going from about 54 to $64,000. So our pension is no longer reduced. So we're receiving the equivalent of 25 years worth of service without any further reduction. So we're now covering roughly 70% of pre-retirement earnings. We're having to take less out of the RRSP and TFSAs. And those amounts are able to further supplement into retirement. The last case study here we wanted to show would be in the event Sandra received workforce adjustment terms and a transition support measure equivalent to 1 year's worth of salary, 140,000 in her scenario here. So that would increase annual income from, I believe it was $64,000 to $68,000. And that's because the lump sum payment that was received is further able to be, well, one, sheltered. There are clauses where you can delay receiving that severance pay or that transition support measure into a further calendar year. It can be split over 2 calendar years. So that's why we have this kind of employment income variable here or input here, 70,000 in 2026, 70,000 in 2027. Part of it is going into the RRSP. So the idea here is you may want, if you can, to hold off on RRSP contributions. If you have some RRSP contribution room and you are thinking that this is a possibility for you, the workforce adjustment payment, the TSM payment, you will need contribution room to shelter that. And you'll want to shelter that in what otherwise will be likely your highest income earning year in your career. So again, all of these scenarios that we've gone through, quite simplistic, because we wanted to show these concepts, but we can be very specific and tailored to every individual and add spouse and change the ages that you want to take specific incomes, so on and so forth. Delaying CPP, taking CPP early, so it's highly adjustable. So I certainly encourage everybody to take us up on showing you these projections and showing you your pension estimates as well. And you can certainly download that information or that task onto us, as opposed to maybe waiting in line or in a queue through the pension center. So I encourage all of you to take us up and contact us. So next step to prepare for ERI, obviously, what I'm sure you've all received isn't quite there isn't a lot of data. There isn't a lot of clarity as it stands, but you're going to want to confirm your eligibility and verify your eligibility, age, service length, group classification, obviously. Think about supplemental income going forward if need be. Again, I encourage everyone to consult your advisor, hopefully, and ask for these types of projections. We have our questionnaire. We'd be happy to show you a detailed financial readiness analysis tailored to you, and to help you make those upcoming decisions. Because from what we gather, you're going to have to maybe very, very quick and nimble on these decisions as well. So by all means, please contact us at any time. I think there's a number of questions in the Q&A that I think the team's uh, been diligently answering. So thank you so much. And in addition to these cash flow projections, we do offer different tax optimized strategies, corporate class funds, tax-free savings accounts. We have over 65 years of service, of professional trusted service to public sector employees and their families. So we feel we're uniquely positioned to kind of help out and help you make these important financial decisions here. I remember it was about 11 or 12 years ago, our team providing PAFSO members with different severance eligibility ideas as well. And it's hard to believe it's already been 10, 12 years since that time. But in any event, we are here to support, and you can contact us at any time. And complete this questionnaire would likely be the best way to kind of get a more fulsome picture of where things stand for your specific situation as is today. Um, yeah, so with that, I think those are sort of my prepared remarks. I guess we're closing in on 10 o'clock, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Although I won't be able to get into too many details on ERI or workforce adjustment other than what I mentioned, because there just isn't any, there aren't any other details at this stage as far as I'm aware of, but happy to kind of address any questions or concerns here live. I do think we have a little bit of time for that.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry. Look, I just wanted to jump in and say, a lot of some of the questions, the issue is that the employer has not given us those answers yet. I think they are
Yeah.
still themselves thinking through a lot of things. So we have for PAFSO, we have a Q&A, a webinar with us scheduled for 8:30 on Monday. You can get the details. Details are on our website in my last message. So I would suggest that people try to come to that. We won't be recording and posting that, but we will be doing a summary and meeting notes that we'll share for people who can't be there. And in the meantime, I mean, I can stay for another 15 minutes or so till quarter after 11 if there's a lot of questions. I don't know if you guys are can do that, but I see we do have one question with Annalise has her hand up there. So maybe we could get Annalise to talk. Annalise, just be aware you are recorded if you when you speak. So I've just given you permission to talk there, but you still seem to be muted on your microphone. Go ahead. Oh, maybe she's changed her mind. So,
No,
Annalise,
that's
if you
okay.
want, oh, you can put your comment, your question in the Q&A box, and we will still keep an eye. I thought I saw another hand somewhere. Did somebody else want to talk?
And I might just ask the TradeX team as well. I kind of went through a lot of information there too. I don't know if maybe I forgot some item, or if it was pretty much covered. If anybody does have anything that they want to clarify that I may have missed, feel free.
Go ahead, guys. If I think you can unmute yourselves.
I'm not sure how many times you repeated that if they fill in the questionnaire, then they'll get the full retirement forecast. And clarifying that when we talked about income, retirement income, that's the after tax available to spend money, not taxable income. So it's what you get to live on.
Yeah, that is very, very important to know. Can I just ask, I mean, you guys, I presume, are talking to, lots of different people. What is the mood like out there? Do you have a sense that a lot of people are considering doing this, that we're not otherwise thinking about retiring? Or, I mean, is the incentive attractive to people, or what's the sense?
I'd say most of the ones that have contacted us thus far either are eagerly awaiting the possibility of WFA, which comes with a little extra benefit, but they were generally pretty close to making the move anyway. So it's just like, this is Christmas. I'm getting an extra bonus and for nothing. And then it's just a debate on, can I even get a bigger bonus because I'll be able to access the WFA somehow, which
Yeah, so I mean, from the point of view of the bargaining agents, we're looking at some of this and thinking, well, okay, like if you, and just to be clear, so if someone does get an affected letter and it does get down to that and they take advantage, they want to take advantage of the transitional measures that are in the WFA directive, that would also include a waiver of penalty on any pensions, right? If you're eligible.
It would, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So from our point of view as bargaining agents, we're kind of looking at this and thinking, okay, they keep saying it's not linked. And I guess in the sense, it's not linked in the sense that you don't have to be an affected employee to take advantage of this ERI. You can apply if you've got the years, even if you're in a department that's currently hiring, although it's going to be at the discretion of the deputy minister, and there are already rumors that some people at D&D, for example, have been told they're not going to be allowed to do it, depending on certain job categories, because they're going to need to retain them, which will be interesting for morale and so on in some of those places. But if you do, like if you are ultimately an affected employee, the government is on the hook not just to pay you your pension that you've already paid into, but to provide you with these transitional support measures of up to an extra year of salary. And so, there's a little bit of question in our minds, is this just another way of them try and by giving these very like these relatively short deadlines, trying to get people to jump before they know if they're eligible for, if they're eligible for that year, that extra year of support. So that's something to consider. But if you miss the ERI and then you're not affected, then you could lose that window. And the other question I saw that I also had was, and Blair, sorry, I saw we both answered it, but if someone say turns 50 or 55 in June, um, can there's supposed to be, I think they had said a 3 or 4 month window to apply for the ERI, so that would be say till May. Could that person apply and say, well, I will be 55 in June, so my date would be June or July, or do you have to be 55? Do you have to be at the eligible age when you apply?
as you mentioned, I don't think we've seen any specific yet on ERI side, but normally with pension, it's going to be as of the date you elect to retire. So
Right.
if you're going to be 50 on such and such a date and 30 years of service and whatever, then you will get that amount of pension. So it's normally that. So that's what we assume will be the circumstance. But
Right, right. But there's going to be, I think, a year, like there's going to be an eligibility window when you have to go. So you
correct,
would not, for example, be able to say, well, I'm 47 now
2028.
and
Yeah.
I'm going to
yeah.
retire in 2028. I don't think that's not foreseen in the requirements. But again, there's a lot of details that they have not, I think, hashed out, and still a lot of questions. And this actually, I mean, there's still legislation, there's still enabling things that need to be done to actually implement this. So, watch this space. There could still be some more questions. I see we have another Q&A. Um, so I think this is more a question for PAFSO. Did you say we could be eligible for our usual severance pay when leaving the PS per the collective agreement? With 16 years of service, would that 50 would be 52 weeks plus the usual severance? So The severance question, I mean, we stopped accumulating severance payments back in, when was it? I think it was about 2015. So if you chose to leave your severance that you were entitled to at that point, if you left it in the system, rather than cashing it out, taking it out at the time, when you leave, you would be, I believe, entitled to like all the usual things that you get when you leave. So yeah, your accumulated severance would be paid to you. But if you were hired after 2015 and you didn't, or you chose to take that money out earlier, then it's gone, and you stopped accumulating as of 2015. Like I had at that point, I think 22 weeks, which I left in my bank. Because I thought, hey, my salary, not to, no distrust of Tradex and you investment folks, but I thought, hey, chances are I will get increments and maybe get promoted or whatever, and my week of salary might be worth more and by the time I'm ready to go. But from what I understand, you get all your like you get your normal stuff that you would get when you retire in addition to the WFA stuff. Correct me, guys, if I'm wrong and that's not your understanding. I should have done that first, I guess.
That sounds correct, although someone was looking into it in a different department and they were getting a specific severance amount that was could additional plus the TSM.
So there is the amount that's attached to the TSM, and if someone is an EX as well, EXs have different rules, and they have more flexibility to negotiate individually with their departments. Also, some agencies, that are not in the core public service might have different rules, but for us, from what I understand, all of like the collective agreements and everything still apply, right? Even in a WFA situation. So what is in the collective agreement, what you should, as far as I understand, what you should still get. But we are talking to the employer about these things, and we're trying to get them to spell it out, much more clearly, because again, a lot of these things seem to be being done on the fly. And one of the other criticisms that's been brought up by some of the unions is, look, it seems like nobody has sat down and thought about the timelines for all these things and how they mesh or don't mesh. So people are being asked to make decisions without all of the information being available, and we are trying to get them to look at the various deadlines and at least harmonize so that people would know, okay, am I going to be eligible for WFA before I make a decision about whether I want to take the ERI or not. But I suspect that part is by design, that they're hoping they might get some people to leap before they know that they're entitled to the extra money. So again, one of those things where we can't make the decisions for people, but we can try to give them as much information as we can so that they can at least make the best informed choices that are possible.
And that's why we encourage the forecast. Is it's kind of the only way to see all of the different parts Luke talked about. So what happens with reduced amount of years of service, what that does to what you were going to have available to spend through out your retirement, what's the impacts on CPP, OAS, and how long your own money lasts that you've already saved. So
Yes. Yeah. Well, and not to be pessimistic about my own negotiating power, our negotiating power at PAFSO, but for example, a friend of mine retired right before COVID, and I remember that when inflation spiked at one point, he got a 7 or 8% increase in his pension. And we did not manage to get our members a 7 or 8% increase in any single year of the COVID pandemic. So, those kinds of things I think are something to think about when people are looking at this. But
Yeah, no,
but
that's a good
yeah,
point.
it is a lot to take in, and hopefully this has been helpful to people. In fact, I'm sure it's been helpful to people in thinking through this through. Oh, I see another question. How big a difference does Quebec or Ontario residents make for tax impact, especially if you receive a TSM lump sum amount?
It would have an impact. I mean, generally, the income tax rates in Quebec are a little bit higher than in Ontario, but again, the 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 specific forecast will show for you, what that looks like. But yeah, the tax rates are in Quebec are slightly higher than in Ontario.
Thanks. Thanks. I see someone saying I also read that receiving a WFA or TSM or possibly ERI may depend on seniority in the department. So if there were too many people who put up their hand, then the deputy head could say only those that have the most years of service would qualify. I'm not sure about that. I mean, that's something I think I'll note that down as a question for our webinar on Friday that we could try to get an answer for. I don't know that they have that kind of discretion on these things. And, even when they do have discretion, the department doesn't have unfettered discretion. So, they have to apply their discretion in a non-discriminatory way, in a way that's basically fair to everyone. And some of these things like, you really might be getting into some unequal treatment of people based on, even some protected human rights grounds. So I will ask about that, but that I'm not sure. And I would encourage people, I mean, there are a lot of rumors and things going around and a lot of people speculating. And they're not always speculating based on information that they could logically have. I always ask myself, like, when I hear things, it's like, okay, if the deputy ministers are thinking about, applying certain criteria and they're, who would be telling that person who's telling you? Sometimes our sources of information, people are just guessing, and I kind of encourage people to take things with a grain of salt. Go to the, Canada.gcca websites where, and the NJC websites where the directives are. Go to the PAFSO website. I mean, we we're trying to get as accurate information as we can, and I think really until we hear about some things, from the horse's mouth, we need to be careful about those different things. I see Delia has raised her hand, so I will allow Delia to talk if she wants to answer a question and ask to unmute. Delia, go ahead. Do you have a question or comment? You need to unmute. I'm not. Oh, Jessica says she read that in the NJC directive. Okay, I will. I'll ask our team about how that needs to be applied. Um, um, question. The DM did mention that in the DM town hall that in more volunteers than required for the ERR, then seniority would apply. Okay. But again, I just would like to confirm that that's something that they actually would be able to do. Delia, I see you can speak if you would like, but if you can't find your microphone or anything, you can always use the Q&A box. Where those are able to pop up, um, and we can see them. Does anybody else have any last questions, any last comments before we go ahead? If not, I will say thank you to you guys, to everybody, to Blair and Luke and the team for all of this useful information and for answering so many of our questions. And I hope that this has helped clarify things a little bit for people. We will post the recording on our YouTube channel and make the link available, and we'll make it available to you guys in case you want to share it with anyone, because I think it's a really good presentation that might be of interest to others as well. And thank you again. We really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody who
Thank
came.
you.
Thanks
Thanks.
for having us. Happy holidays. Thank you. Bye bye.
Happy holidays, everybody. Bye bye.